Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this latest episode of Eco Voices. Today, the podcast is going international. We'll be hearing from Max Kennan, the founder of the website Biodegradable, about how to choose regenerative career paths and make a real impact through the power of the collective. Max is awesome, and I hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as I enjoyed filming it. Thank you for joining me. I would love to. I know you sent me this awesome email blurb that I've read like 6 times about you and your story. And so I would love it if you'd be cool to just kind of share with listeners who you are and yeah, a bit of your story.
Yeah, sure thing. So my name's Max, and I studied climate change at university. And I realized it was a lot about the problem of climate change. So like everything, it was super doom and gloom. The science is accurate, but at the same time, they weren't talking about solutions much. So I felt that a lot of my cohort were feeling really anxious, kind of depressed about it. And we started sharing about climate change solutions from the perspective of different projects and companies providing solutions. And we end up building like a blog that has all of our research on there to try and shift the narrative towards solutions. Because the way I see it, if you're thinking about the problem, you're framing it in a way where there's not really anything you can do about it. So you got to be focused on like what can we do. Um, and yeah, I'm really passionate about trying to help people figure out specifically with their degree and their career, is there something I can do with my skills and my degree that can have a positive impact? So that's kind of what I see my purpose being in all of this. And it's my way to impact as well. So yeah.
I love that. I think that's amazing. I think it's a really unique route you've taken. And speaking of unique route, I want to go back even further because you told me via email. So you're Australian, but you grew up
Yeah.
moving between Asia and the EU. That sounds like
Um,
a cool childhood to me.
yeah, it was really cool. So I changed school like 7 times throughout my school years. So I was always moving around new places, meeting new people. And yeah, I was at international schools, and I feel like it really gave me a global perspective of the world, different cultures, different kind of people, different um, ways people grow up, and how everyone is so unique and different. So I felt like that definitely tied in with me wanting to do something with my career that was had a more global impact for sure,
Right,
because I felt like
right.
that's the community I was kind of part of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like it helped you kind of gain that perspective on like the collective. So instead of it being a really kind of one-way street, like I love that. And so I want to get into talking about the incredible website you have with a genius pun, dare I say, I think this is yours to
Yeah.
introduce. It's pretty amazing.
Biodegradable. Yeah.
Come on. That's genius. So did you come up with that? Were you one day just like, I got it?
Actually, my mom did. My mom came up with it, and I was like, "Yes, that's it." It used to be Green Grads Connect, and then she threw that in there, and I was like, "We got to go with it. Got to roll with that."
Yeah, that's
So
genius. That's genius. So I love it because it's kind of, I've been looking through it and it's kind of like a one-stop shop for all things related to, okay, I'm a young person. How do I actually get involved and build a career in this sector? And so, what's the origin story there? Like what was the birthplace of that?
the birthplace of it was actually, I was thinking about making a YouTube channel about cool companies that I found inspiring fighting climate change. And that came from the fact that I was feeling super overwhelmed and anxious about climate change and thinking there's nothing I can do. And then when I started doing independent research and just found these cool projects, it totally changed my mentality. And I realized I want to provide that experience for more people. So I came up with the concept of a YouTube channel in April 2022. And then that afternoon, I kept workshopping the idea, and it got to the point where, oh, a website or app or something makes more sense. And then, yeah, then I was just writing articles in a Google Drive folder for like a year and just slowly putting them into different categories and trying to map out the different sectors in my head. And then I got some other students involved who the first one called Heidi was in my class. and she expressed interest in getting involved, and we started writing them together, and then built a website from it.
Immediately when you go onto the website, like what just hits you is the phrase, we dissolve the greenwash. And for people listening who might not really be familiar with what that means, I think that's something important to unpack for sure.
Yeah, greenwashing is a difficult thing because so a lot of companies in their marketing, in their communications, in how they portray their brand, they want to seem sustainable. So lots of them, you'll get brands that have nothing to do with sustainability talking about, oh, we're super sustainable. You should work for us because we're all about sustainability. And it's very hard to figure out which ones are staying true to that, whether it's just for their brand or whether they're actually having a positive impact. So the reason we write we dissolve the greenwash is because the rubric we use to determine which projects we write about is centered around like, does this business company project exist purely to solve some kind of climate related issue? Because you'll get tons of people with, I don't know, an IT brand with an emphasis on sustainability, but their actual business practices and their daily activities aren't really about helping the planet in some way. So I feel like it's really important for people who care about the planet to end up in the right places that are genuinely making an impact and not fed into these um, roles where they're actually not going to be able to have the impact they want because this company wanted to look sustainable.
Right, right. And I that's an awesome point you make because I think that there's for people that might not really be involved in the environmental movement, but from the outside looking in, you hear people saying, "Oh, but you can recycle this water bottle, or you can do all these things," and there is that misconception that I feel like it kind of preys on the innocent, or not the innocent, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like it. And so I love that you're kind of breaking through that wall because it's just a tricky little scheme that they've got going. It's not cool. It's not
Yeah, no,
cool.
no,
No,
no.
no. I love that. And I have to say, Max, this is the least prepared I've been for an interview. And it's not because I didn't do my homework, but because I knew that I wanted to have kind of an authentic conversation with you. I wanted it to flow. I didn't want it to be so like
Yeah,
rigid because yeah, you're someone that I want to learn from and learn with. And I love your passion for the power of the collective. I love that you're someone who, you opened that door into the movement and then you held it open for other people because I think that unfortunately there is even in this sector a lot of competition. And I want this job or I want this platform or I want, and I love that just kind of judging from what I know about you thus far, you don't really feed into that narrative. You seem like someone who you want whoever wants to be involved to feel empowered. And so,
yeah.
was that something that was kind of innate within you? Was that something that someone else kind of like watered those seeds in you? I'm really curious about that.
Um, That's a good question. I'm not really sure. I think it was just the recognition of the positive impact that this research, when I was doing it just for my own sake to understand what are these solutions, um, I realized the kind of transformational impact that it had and how such a small pivot of mentality and mindset made me go from a place of thinking, oh, I don't know if I want to work in this sector because the problem's too overwhelming to I'm actually really excited about all these opportunities. And then that just made me realize I need to broadcast this to other people. The first thing I thought about was the people in my course. I was thinking to myself like, okay, I hope I can somehow get everyone else on my course to be learning about this stuff too, so they feel the way I do now, because I knew how they were feeling. Um, yeah, and then I realized like that's a good way for me to have my own impact because I was also facing that same question. What do I want to do with my time that's going to have a positive impact? Um, and I thought that introducing that, helping solve that question for other people could be an interesting way to do that.
Right. I love it because I think that there's a paralysis of inaction, where if you
Mhm.
just sit and think about the climate crisis, it feels huge because it is huge. And so it
Yeah,
it kind of it requires that response. And I'm a big fan of like sit in the discomfort, but don't drown in it, you know? So it's
Mhm.
okay to not bypass that it makes you really uncomfortable. It's okay not to bypass the fact that it makes you sad or scared, but I think that that action part of it is critical really to moving past those emotions, or rather moving through them. And so that's what I love. And what I also love about, you know, the work that you're doing is it's international, because I was looking at you know, you kind of break it down sector by sector. And I was looking at some of these things and I was like, wait a minute, that's close to me. You have on the website, you have For Ocean as one of the things listed, one of the
Yeah,
resources listed. That's in Florida. I live in Miami, Florida. So that's just a little bit up north. And
that's
I
so
was like,
cool.
it's so
Yeah.
cool. I was like, wait a minute, I know exactly the work they're doing. Shout out to them. Um, and so I love that there's that international perspective where it's not just you know, this is central to Europe or this is central to the US, but there's that international connection. And I think that goes back exactly to what you were saying about like that's your story. Well, that's a part of your
Mhm.
story, is that you've always kind of had that. And so I just wanted to say I thought that was really cool that you were listing resources here. I appreciated that big time.
I'm glad to hear there was something near you. That's quite kind of blows my mind as well, because the way we've been approaching it is just finding projects that we think that's really awesome and putting it out there, not basing it much on location. So hopefully it gets to a point where that will be the case for everyone, where there's enough projects on there that everyone will find something close to home that they could get involved with. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, Max, are you in the UK right now? Where are you calling in from?
I'm in Switzerland right now,
Oh,
and the yeah, it's quite
amazing.
random. I just graduated uni. My family lives here, so I'm here now. And then the rest of the people working on the website are all in the UK, um, in the
Got it.
University of Exeter specifically.
Got it. Well, congratulations on graduating. That's awesome. What did you graduate in?
I graduated in geography. I'm not sure if the US is the same as the UK system, but geography in the UK kind of just means anything related to planet or people, and it's very super broad. I studied
Got
it
it.
because I was curious to understand like how the world works and tangible things I see in my daily life. Like yeah, it's not
That's
so much
really
about rocks as people think.
I have to admit, that is exactly where my mind went. I was like, oh, geography, sweet. And I don't know why you go to that, you go to the rocks. But no, I hear you. It's much, you know, it's much bigger. So you were in the UK studying. I
Yeah.
have to say, from, you know, from a neighbor in another continent, I feel like the UK, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is a bit electric right now for young people in the climate movement. I feel like, I
Yeah, I
don't know
hope
why, I
this
feel like stuff
well.
is happening in the UK.
I think the UK does a pretty good job at educating people about it, and they're quite loud about it too. So there's lots of protesting. When I was on campus, there were lots of protest groups like Extinction Rebellion who would come to campus and get involved with the students. So I definitely think that resonates.
Right. Yeah. There's the US is a really the US is a very interesting atmosphere for the climate movement, because you know you have a lot of innovation happening here, and obviously you know, like everywhere, you have people that really care. But and this is not specific to the States, but the it's been really like politicized, this issue, you know. So you have some people that just won't vote on things, or you know, big oil is a huge problem here. And so I've always been really inspired by seeing the different things happening in Europe, in the European Union specifically. I know that, you know, England's on the other side of that, but I've been really inspired by like the action that's being taken, because that's where I feel like the US has fallen behind big time, is that you have that grassroots on the ground movement, but
Yeah,
the policies aren't being passed at such a, for lack of a better word, like strong level. Um,
yeah,
so I think we need to have a much more like aggressive approach that we're just not having, and it's a bummer.
Yeah. I think that's probably the case in like most, pretty much everywhere around the world. Like there are movements in the positive direction, but it needs to be more. Um, I'm not sure if this is the case. I'm keen to ask you about that, but do you feel like then people's identity politics are really tied into whether they'll choose to talk about or have some feelings related to climate change? Like, do you think that their political party could be a barrier to caring about climate change?
100%. And I do want to preface, if anyone's listening to this who's from the party I'm going to reference, and you care, like, this is not a, one size fits all scenario. I'm speaking really generically here, but yes, 100%. So, the States we're like many places kind of in that two-party system where there's this notion that like if you're Democrat, so if you're left wing, you're going to care and not even just care about, but you're going to actually believe in climate science. Like you're going to believe in what's happening. And then if you're Republican or right leaning, once again, this is not everybody, but a majority at least of the politicians that loudly represent the party, deny deny the evidence, deny that it's happening. And so that's really, really tough. And I think that's the difficulty of a two-party system is that I think there may be, Republicans who think, no, this is legit. Like you see the science, but because they vote a certain way or because they follow certain politicians, they'll deny it or actively you know, support like as constituents, they'll support their politicians in voting against helpful policy. So that's a huge bummer and an excellent point you bring up that I think as people sow their own identities in politics, that the climate crisis, at least here in the States, is kind of becoming a victim to that divide. And that's tough.
That's such a difficult thing to deal with because yeah, that's really crazy to me because I can't think of in Europe that doesn't really happen that much. There are definitely some politics involved with it, but you don't get as much climate denial. Like outright climate denial is quite I wouldn't say taboo, but it's quite uncommon in the places that I've grown up, especially in the last like 5 years. Everyone seems to be on the same page that yeah, it's a problem. People see to varying degrees, like maybe disagree on policies, but there aren't that many people who just straight up do not believe in it at all. So it's a shame to hear that such a large amounts of the population feel that way because
Yeah,
it's
and
also a global problem. Like it affects everyone.
yeah, and the states, the level of emissions coming from this country is a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to stomach. Things could get a little nutty here, if you ever read the news.
Yeah.
Things could get nutty here for sure.
Feel like half the time I open like my phone and stuff, even though I'm nowhere near the US, it's just like US news and stuff happening in America. And
Oh my
I probably
God.
get this over exaggerated, crazy perspective on what's going on there. Because obviously I only see the most crazy things that make it onto the news that get broadcast to us over in Europe. But
Yeah,
yeah.
it's embarrassing sometimes, Max. And also, I don't know if you've heard about the like Florida stories. I don't know if that's like there's yeah, there's this maybe this is more stateside, but there's kind of a running joke, if you will, with some truth behind it that like the craziest stories come out of Florida, which is where I'm
Oh yeah.
from.
Yeah, I can think of one guy like Florida Man, is he called? Who
Yep.
just stands outside in like a hurricane or something. The thing about Florida people being kind of like wild or yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of connection with alligators. Uh yeah, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. But transitioning now, um, something else that you shared with me via email is your interest in kind of getting into the energy sector, into that energy transition. Um, is that the direction that you see yourself actively going in at this point?
Yeah, so I'm applying for a lot of graduate schemes in the energy transition. Um, it's really hard as a graduate trying to get your first job though,
Yeah.
especially I feel a lot of those roles they're looking for technical skills that I don't have. So they'll look for people with a business background who also understand engineering, and it's so different from my background in geography.
Right.
Typically, geographers will go into like sustainability reporting if you want to do sustainability. Um, but I just found myself really captivated by business as I started biodegradable and learned some basic business foundations. I realized that's where I want to work. So I've been trying to tailor my cover letters to write a story around that hopefully could give me the business acumen I need to get those roles. I'm going to apply for as many as I can and then maybe get a master's to help me out if that's what I need to do. Um, but I think yeah, with the competitiveness of the job market over here right now, I'll just be taking whatever roles I can to bolster my skill sets. And then when I'm in a good position to either move to energy transition or to some kind of smaller companies providing cool climate change solutions. That's the plan.
It's really tough because you have the passion's not missing, but there is sometimes these requirements for jobs that are tough. And so something I love about biodegradable is that you guys you have these really helpful guides on how to utilize LinkedIn to connect with employers, things like that. And I think that that's something I haven't seen. I think that's very unique because it's not something that people talk about often on, different websites or groups that I've been a part of, is how to actually move forward and get the job you want and not just have a degree that, sits kind of on the back burner. And so what is it for you about the energy transition movement? And I ask this because that's like I'm like on the other side of sustainability. So I'm like looking in like, what does this mean? What is it for you that really inspires you to want to work in that part?
I think I was learning about uh, the geopolitics in the Northern Sea next to the UK, where they are planning on installing like huge amounts of wind farms and all this new wind technology that's coming out that's going to completely change the game of where people can build wind farms. And as I was learning about all of this, I read an article from the Financial Times and just thought, this is super interesting. And as I looked more into it, I thought, okay, that's somewhere where I could learn the kind of business skills that I would that I would want to grow throughout my career and also be able to know that I'm having a positive impact. Because if I had to pick one thing that I knew I'm going to have a massive impact, it would probably just be transitioning towards renewables. So that's like a no-brainer for me. If I can find a role there, then I know I'll still feel connected to my values, to my passion for the environment. And yeah, it was quite a random, not random, but like unexpected decision to go that direction. Your position too, and where you're working and what you said you're on the other side.
Yes, the other side just meaning the same focus, but on the people aspect of it, where well, people and conservation of like wildlife conservation. So I've suddenly fallen in love with kind of like how you said, Max, that it's just you end up somewhere and you're like, oh, that was a little bit of a different course than I thought. I've become really, really passionate about rewilding. Um, I read a book, I cannot remember the name right now. Dang it. Oh man, it's something like 50% Earth or something like that. Maybe it'll come up if people Google it. But I read this great book where the author was talking about, a huge problem requires a huge solution, and that there would be a significant amount of power in literally like relinquishing parts of the earth that we as a species have like taken over and giving it back to nature to literally rewild. And the idea that you know, human solutions are going to be so helpful and are already so helpful in trying to fix a problem that we created. But that also, nature at her core, like the solutions are there, that there's such an intrinsic understanding of, I mean, the soil beneath your feet, the way that different plants and minerals interact and different species of animals and other beings, like that if you give the space life will grow. And so, I'm really passionate about trying to actually rewild that. So like getting in the ocean, putting your goggles on and planting different like little coral. And then I'm also on the other side, I'm really passionate about rewilding people. When I say rewilding people, I think that I don't really understand where we went wrong in the idea that we're somehow separate from the
Mhm.
environment perspective that I think has caused so much of this damage to the earth is this idea that it's like no harm, no foul because this has nothing to, I'm separate. It's just reminding people of their interconnectivity to the earth, you know? I guess same side, we're neighbors. Yeah.
I love that. That's super cool. How do you do that? For you, is that the rewilding of the coral as well? Or do you have is this a podcast as the kind of vehicle towards that
Yeah.
rewilding people that you mentioned?
Good question. It's a little bit of everything. So I've always been a person that I'm pretty action oriented. I think I struggle if I feel like I'm just sitting not actually like getting my hands dirty. And so yeah, the physical restoration is really important for me and also the little things. If I love to take walks in my neighborhood and if I'm walking and there's a bunch of trash, I'm going to pick it up. Like literally doing little actions like that. I find that in like little actions build to big actions. And so I want to make sure that I'm not just looking for the huge opportunities of like I'm in the water and I'm replanting coral, but I want to be a good steward of the earth, on a day-to-day basis. And then also, yeah, I think the podcast, having these types of conversations um are so important. Like just hearing different perspectives, seeing that we're all connected is big. And then, I want to turn it to you, Max. What on a daily basis, how do you feel that you're getting to kind of live out that action-oriented side of yourself that wants to find and is finding those solutions?
That's a great question. I think I'm really grateful to be surrounded by nature in the place I live, and like I take a lot of time to connect with nature. I think the question of daily lifestyle kind of impact, like trying to minimize your carbon footprint, is is one which I resonated a lot with at school. And that was when like I would take my bike to school every day. I still bike pretty much everywhere I can. And then I started like having to go and fly to uni. And then I was just thinking, it's so difficult to be able to consistently not have an impact. And then I shifted my mindset to the big thing, which was how do I get other people to follow sustainable careers? So I actually don't spend too much time thinking about like my carbon footprint on a daily basis, but I do spend a lot of time trying to put myself in nature, going out for walks, and just appreciating nature in a way. Like I like meditation too, and I like doing that outdoors and just trying to be appreciative of the earth that we live on, I guess.
Experiencing that nature is so critical. And I love to see the way that people light up when they're outside, when there's a beautiful sunset and everybody just stops. To me, I'm like, that's the moment. That's if I could bottle that feeling, I think that, yeah, I think that getting out and exploring and finding, some people, hiking may not be for you, but sitting and meditating in the grass in your backyard might be for you. And so I love I love that answer that actually going out and just experiencing in the present moment the life around you, I also think is a huge way to avoid burnout, right? Because
Yeah,
like you and I were both working in and actively participating in a space that is, I think, like primed for burnout. Because like I said, such a massive, oh my God, like it's the perfect pipeline to burnout because it's such a massive such a massive problem. It can feel so scary. It can be frustrating as young people when you sometimes feel like you don't have a seat at the table, or that you're not really being heard, or like when like older people will be like, well, this is for you guys to figure out. And you're like, that's not
yes,
fair.
I find that narrative so frustrating. of
It's
like the
so fair.
torch, passing on the torch, like it's all on you.
Yeah, it's ridiculously unfair. And so, yeah, I think you have to spend enough time out in the earth, on the earth and in nature to be like, this is why we do what we do, because it's worth saving, it's worth protecting. And but yeah, that torchbearer is a cruel burden we've received. Max, when you're just kind of enjoying nature, what are some good things to do where you are?
So I feel quite blessed to be in the mountains a lot of the time. So I love the mountains and people that go skiing, mountain biking, hiking a lot. And I think in a lot of these places nearby mountain, like where I live, I can get in a car and be out in nature in the mountains in like an hour. And I think it's become quite normal for people to do that. I think it's a mentality here where it would almost be strange if it's like, oh, you haven't gone to the lake or to the mountains in the last few years. Like that's kind of crazy because yeah, it's kind of part of the culture here.
I love that. And I can in a different way because we are flat as can be here, but I can relate to that kind of on the beach side of it would be bizarre. I mean, even if you don't go that often here, it'd be weird if someone's like, I haven't been to the beach in 5 years because it's like
Yeah.
just and so I'm kind of curious about, thinking about people that might not actually have a lot of access to those kind of the beauty that we're surrounded by in our respective areas. Like I'm curious about how people can still foster that connection to nature if everything seems, I don't know, I'm thinking about no disrespect to the Midwest of the US, but for the reason the Midwest is in my mind. Like I'm curious about how people can still foster that connection if they don't have that thing, that like
Yeah.
I don't
That's a
know.
really good question. I think I would imagine it would be really difficult for me to live somewhere like LA where I've seen the urban sprawl is just so big and dense that there are not that many green spaces. But I feel like even if you can get 1 square meter of ground that's just soil or grass or something, and you just like take off your shoes and stand on that, that grounds you pretty fast, I feel.
Yeah, there's something about that concrete jungle that is just abrasive. And I maybe that's also where the like nerdy part of my rewilding passion comes in. I'm like, just stop building. I know people need money. I know people need places to live, but gosh, it makes a huge difference when you've got that soil under your feet and you're not finding these like makeshift like parks that are in the middle of two huge buildings. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of, I think that as we venture into sustainability, like there are going to have to be huge changes made in how we live and how we build and what the status quo has always been, because it's just not, I don't think it's long-term sustainable for people's mental health to be
Yeah.
trapped in four walls day after day.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen some really cool concepts for cities and like renewed versions of cities and high streets where there's tons of nature incorporated. And I think it would just completely shift the whole feeling and the atmosphere of being there. Just like putting more trees in, I think can totally change how you experience life in the inner city. I used to be really
100%.
interested in urban planning. That's where I thought my career was going like 5 years ago. And yeah, I think there's so much scope for us to make cities more inclusive with nature too.
I agree. I'm excited about the possibility of a multifaceted approach where you have different people with different skill sets in the room. I think that that's something that really excites me is the idea of the opportunity to, have a city planner sit down in the future with someone like you, who will be working kind of in that like energy transition. And I think that I don't know. I'm excited about that community element as we move forward into sustainability of like, I want, I never want just one perspective. I want different people who are focusing on different things within the sustainability movement to be able to effectively kind of plan out the way that our world works. I think that's something that maybe I think we're still missing that a little bit, that connection.
Yeah, for sure. I think community is just like the most powerful thing, and diversity of thought as well. I think if you can have teams together who are coming from different backgrounds, who can all bring their unique perspectives, you're going to have really good outputs.
Absolutely. And that's a great segue into the fact that biodegradable also offers community groups. That's really, really awesome. What was the thought behind facilitating the opportunity to have groups like that?
I think the vision for the platform was always let's just get people together. That's why we wanted it to be like a centralized hub that didn't discriminate against one type of student, but it was for anyone who wanted to figure out what can I do with my degree, no matter what I studied, no matter where my interests are. And at the same time, that just fed into, okay, well, if the whole point is to get all these people together and just get that kind of energy all in one place, we should be facilitating interactions between them. So you can go and make a profile, tell people about yourself, join different groups related to whether it's if you're trying to find jobs, you can join groups and talk there, or within specific niches and industries that you're interested in. I just think it's one thing to tell people, hey, there's this cool company doing this, and another to facilitate discussions around it and have people be able to express themselves and also bring their ideas to the table and share more projects that just 10x's the potential of what we could do.
I love that. Yeah, I'm looking at the groups right now, and so there are 5 groups that people can join if they're interested in. There's the careers and experience, climate discussion, climate news, hot topics, and meet the community. And that's something that I think just really showcases what you guys are doing at Biodegradable is that there's such a diversity in topics, and you can, it is about that taking that action and that solution. And I also see you do internships. That's very cool. That's exciting. That feels
Yeah, we
legit.
do. Like, so we're looking to make a page on how you can find internships with other companies and
Mhm.
advertising internships, and we do that so far through our newsletter. But then we also have internships with us where anyone could come on and contribute to the platform by writing about what they're interested in, and at the same time get to do research into types of careers they might want to follow. So
I love that. I love that it's such a an impact hub specifically looking at students and empowering people. And I just think you guys are doing really, really awesome, important work. Yeah.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, good on you. You're doing great stuff. And so Max, usually the kind of the closing question I ask, and it's very broad, so take your time to think about it, is if you could kind of give a call of action to listeners. It can be about anything related to kind of the environmental sphere. Um, what would it be? It's your moment. No pressure.
I think it would be that it doesn't matter what background you have. You don't need to be a specialist in environmental science to consider that there are pathways for you to go and make an impact if you would like your career to be there. Um, it's super important that everyone finds their own way to make a difference. And like you said, when you take those even small steps, they have such a profound impact on how just that positive forward movement has such a profound impact. And it worries me that I see people think, oh, but that can't be me because I studied marketing. So sorry, like I don't really have my place there. And I want to tell anyone that might have a background that they don't think is catered towards the environment. Every project that has positive impact within sustainability needs their finance people, needs marketers, needs communications, HR, right? So it doesn't matter what you study, there's a place for you, and you just have to find some projects that you're passionate about, and it will make you feel completely different when you go and do that research and start exploring your options. Um, it will transform how you feel if you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed or like you can't have an impact. Everyone has their way forward, and when you start discovering what that is, it goes from frightening to exciting.
That is awesome. And Max, I cannot thank you enough for your willingness to talk with me. I just like Slack messaged you 2 months ago and was like, "Hi, I'm Amanda. Do you want to be on my podcast?" And you were like, "Yeah, let's do it." And I'm super grateful. Everybody, please go to biodegradable degrad grad able.com. Check it out. They're doing amazing, important work to encourage not exclusively young people, but tailored to young people to feel empowered and safe enough to get involved. Max, you're awesome. Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure, and it was great to meet you as well. Finally, Amanda.
Finally, likewise. Listen, we're friends on LinkedIn. I'm going to be checking in, seeing how things are going, and yeah, you've got a friend in the States if you ever need anything.
Likewise.
What a gift to be able to hear from Max about how to roll up your sleeves and get involved in mitigating climate change by using the unique skills that each of us possess. Please go to www.biodegradable.com to get involved in the amazing work they're doing. We really are stronger together. I'll see you next time on Eco Voices.